Atlantis. As soon as we speak this name, more than just a civilization awakens in our thoughts. For years, we have heard countless stories about Atlantis. Golden temples, perfectly circular cities, engineering masterpieces in the form of canals, harbors that ruled over the seas. According to Plato's accounts, Atlantis was a city built from interlocking rings of land and water, with massive temples dedicated to the gods at its center, and a civic order far ahead of its time. According to another tradition, this civilization was superior to its era, not only architecturally, but also in knowledge, technology, and wealth. Mysterious metals that existed nowhere else in the world, highly developed agricultural systems, a naval power that crossed oceans. And there are even those who claim that Atlantis possessed technologies such as teleportation, flying devices, or telekinesis. And then, one day, suddenly breaking catastrophes, earthquakes, floods, one of the most magnificent civilizations in history, sank into the darkness of the ocean. But did Atlantis really exist? What if this story only sprang from a philosopher's imagination? Or does a mysterious past still wait beneath the oceans to be discovered? Today, our technology is highly advanced. With modern equipment and sonar systems, we scan the ocean floor. With satellites, we peer into the darkest depths of the oceans. And when we look more closely at the ocean floor, aren't some formations too regular to be mere natural structures? Could these structures be remnants of a civilization that lived thousands of years ago? Scientists have been pursuing this mystery for years. Many people believe that Atlantis once existed. Others consider it pure fiction. This video aims less to clarify whether Atlantis was real or not. Rather, it tells how this idea originated and why it remains so powerful to this day. Chapter 1. The Testimony of a Philosopher, Plato, and the Birth of Atlantis. Our story begins in ancient Greece, about 2,400 years ago. The protagonist is a name almost everyone knows, Plato. Plato was a famous philosopher, but he was not only a philosopher, he was a thinker who asked great questions. How should humanity live? In his most famous work, The Republic, he designed a model of an ideal society, an order in which justice, virtue, and moderation prevail. But this model had a problem. It was completely theoretical. In practice, it was never implemented. And Plato asked himself the following question: what would this ideal society look like if it existed in the real world? In search of an answer, Plato wrote between 360 and 355 BC, two additional works, Timaeus and Critias, and precisely there, Atlantis appears. For the first time in human history, the story is told through the character Critias. Critias heard it from his grandfather. He, in turn, from Solon, the famous lawgiver of Athens. According to the narrative, Solon once travels to Egypt. In the city of Sais, he meets an old priest. The priest explains that the Greeks repeatedly forget their past, not out of guilt, but because of the frequent natural disasters in their land: volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, floods, fires. After every great catastrophe, many lives are lost, and with them disappears society's collective memory. In the Egyptian temples, however, records exist from thousands of years, through which knowledge is passed from generation to generation. And one of these ancient records told of a legendary civilization that supposedly existed 9,000 years ago, Atlantis. This mysterious island and its inhabitants were brought to life through Plato's pen, with extraordinary detail. Chapter 2. What was Atlantis like? Perfect order? Sudden downfall? Plato described Atlantis in such detail to reinforce the moral message of his story. The fall of the civilization was meant to appear all the more tragic, and to give future generations a poignant lesson about virtue and morality. According to the tradition, Atlantis lay beyond the Pillars of Heracles, that is, beyond today's Strait of Gibraltar. a massive island in the middle of the ocean. The capital consisted of concentric rings. This structure served not only aesthetics, but was simultaneously a symbol of order and defense. Technological superiority and prosperity are also described in detail by Plato. There were sophisticated irrigation systems with canals. Agriculture was highly developed and extremely efficient. Temples were decorated with gold and precious metals. Wealth was visible everywhere. But Plato's actual focus was not on technology or architecture, but on morality. The Atlanteans were initially virtuous. They remained true to their divine origin. They were moderate. They were just. But over time, something changed. Wealth grew, power grew, and power begins to corrode character. Arrogance permeated all layers of society. Human desires displaced divine virtues. Society decayed. Eventually, Atlantis was no longer satisfied with what it possessed. It wanted to expand, to conquer. It dreamed of ruling the entire Mediterranean, and only one power stood against it: the ancient Athens idealized by Plato. Here, the story reaches its climax. Atlantean armies march toward Athens. War seems inevitable. Numerically and technologically, Atlantis is superior. Athens is to fall. Its riches to be plundered. But life holds unexpected turns. Nature intervenes. Massive earthquakes, followed by devastating floods. Within a day and a night, the civilization of Atlantis, along with its people and armies, sinks into the sea. But the tragedy does not end there. The Athenian army too, which was preparing to resist, perishes. Plato's message is clear. Virtue and arrogance are equal before nature. Chapter 3. Is Atlantis a myth or reality? The legend of Atlantis remained hidden in books for a long time. Only centuries later was this secret rediscovered. Why did people begin, after so long a time, to search for Atlantis? There are three main reasons. The first reason was the discovery of lost cities in various regions of the world. Troy, Petra, Machu Picchu. Once they were only legends, then they were found. And people asked themselves, if they were real, why not Atlantis as well? The second reason was the scientific revolution. Geology taught us continents move, sea levels rise and fall. What was once land can lie underwater today. With scientific progress, the existence of Atlantis no longer seemed impossible. The third reason was striking similarities between civilizations far removed from one another. Pyramids in Egypt, in Central America, in China, tens of thousands of kilometers separate them. How could these similarities be explained? For some, the answer was simple. Everything had a common origin. And that origin was called Atlantis. Chapter 4. The Breaking Point. The poisoning of the Atlantis idea. At this point, the story becomes complicated and dark. In the 19th and 20th centuries, thinkers like William Scott Elliot made Atlantis more than a philosophical allegory. They declared it the homeland of a superior race. The Atlanteans were considered ancestors of the so-called Aryan race, and they saw themselves as their heirs. A superior race that had brought civilization to the world and then disappeared. This idea fit perfectly with colonialist thinking, for it allowed one to say these monuments could not possibly have been built by these primitive peoples. They were our superior ancestors. Later, Nazi ideology also adopted these ideas. Heinrich Himmler and the Ahnenerbe saw in Atlantis the origin of the Aryan race. Expeditions led from Tibet to Antarctica. With pseudoscience, they attempted to support a racist myth. A harmless philosophical narrative had become an ideological weapon. Chapter 5. Modern technology, new evidence, or new illusions. Today, it is no longer mystics or ideological myths that are in the foreground, but sonars, satellites, and artificial intelligence. The ocean floor is being mapped in more detail than ever before. Around the Azores, people discover regular structures that resemble ruins. In the Mediterranean, traces are found of civilizations destroyed by massive tsunamis. On the coasts of Spain, remnants appear of mysterious cultures like Tartessos. But one point is crucial. None of this proves Atlantis, but they show something more important. A large part of human history still lies underwater and waits to be discovered. Conclusion: did Atlantis really exist? Whether Atlantis existed, as Plato described it, we do not know. But this story remains relevant because it shows us something crucial. Humans tend to underestimate their own potential. They attribute their greatest achievements to an imaginary super civilization. Perhaps the truth is simpler. The pyramids were built by humans. The cities were erected by humans. And often it was also humans who destroyed them. Perhaps Atlantis was once a highly advanced civilization, or perhaps it never existed. Perhaps it lay somewhere completely different, or had a completely different meaning. But one thing is certain: this story challenges us to question ourselves, to examine our ambitions, and to rethink our goals. If this video has awakened new questions in you, and you want not only to memorize history, but to understand it, you can subscribe to the channel. Here we discuss the truth behind legends, with science, documents, and critical thinking. A like and your thoughts in the comments help us continue this journey together. Together we question, together we learn, together we grow. Until the next video.